Yeah, thank you everybody for being here. My name's Lillian. I'm joined by Jason, Vanya, and Deanna from the Department of English, and Austin from the Department of Psychology. And broadly, we're going to be talking to you about the need for free access to digital resources and internet in Ontario public libraries.
And so the issue that brings us here today is to consider what policy changes can be made to better address the needs of Ontario public library users. And to give you a bit of background context, a 2018 survey received by the Ontario Ministry of Tourism and Culture and Sport found that 9% of libraries are being pressured to charge a fee for access to ebooks, and 19% are being pressured to charge a fee for public internet access. And additionally, the Ontario Ministry has been collecting survey data from about 390 libraries since 1990, and in 2011, they began to ask questions related to material formats used in libraries. However, since 1990, there has been no significant change to circulating material formats included in the Ontario Public Library policy. However, in 2018, they have recognized the need to encompass more formats in their libraries.
In terms of what our findings actually tell us, the first thing we wanted to look at is the expenditure that the public libraries incur in their material costs. And what we discovered was that the expenditure on print resources, that is not electronic resources, was significantly higher in proportion to the when compared with the proportion of expenditure on electronic resources. But the value for money that they get per dollar spent on electronic resources was much higher. So you get like 41.1 electronic resources per Canadian dollar spent, as opposed to 1.3 per print resources. So are people actually using that? Our findings actually tell us that yes, the electronic resources has been on a steady use since 2011, with print resources circulation steadily declining since 2011. And 2011 was the year, as Jason pointed out, where like electronic resources was actually introduced into libraries in the first place.
All right, so here is a total proportion of library expenditure for all libraries in Ontario for the past couple of years. And as you can see, the electronic resources, internet costs, and computer costs make up a very small total portion of the total median spending. With staff and staff training and non-electronic resources taking up a good chunk of what they spend their money on. In fact, if you take a closer look, you can see that over the past several years, libraries have spent more of their funds on, proportionally, on telephones and fax machines than they have on internet access.
So specifically when talking about our policy recommendations, what we suggest is altering the language of the regulation 976, in order to prescribe classes from 1 to 5 to include a provision stating in all formats. And the other recommendation is to prescribe an additional class, number 15, that allows for free and open access to the internet. These recommendations will legally prohibit municipalities for charging fees for electronic resources and internet access. And this is important because public libraries and access to technology in public libraries allows us to bridge the digital divide and also to bridge the inequality in access to technological resources. So some of our findings showed, for example, that the use per cardholder for workstation in First Nation communities is actually 3.6 times higher than in other libraries. And access to technological resources in the libraries, 56% of people that access technological resources in the libraries do it on site, with over 2/3 of the amount of people that do it being seniors, and about 63% of people being identified as having low income.
Here, go back, yeah. So the report on tech access in public libraries showed that the majority of people who use tech resources in the library are people who otherwise wouldn't have had access to those. And so by allowing libraries to introduce a fee, we run the risk of harming some very vulnerable populations. On the other hand, by guaranteeing access to the internet as a right for all cardholders to Ontario libraries, as recommended by organizations such as the UN and the EU. We can ensure that we can do everything we can to bridge the digital divide and help ensure access to digital content for all Ontario residents.
So